Welcome to the Commonwealth Club of California and today's program, The Michelle Meow Show. I'm John Zipperer, the Commonwealth Club's Vice President of Media and Editorial and the co-host of The Michelle Meow Show here at the club in downtown San Francisco. This is just the latest of more than 160 online programs we have been producing since the shelter-in-place took effect this spring. Most of these programs are offered free to you, and we welcome you to watch it now or in the future, of course, archived and in podcast. But if you would like to support the production of our online program, please do so at commonwealthclub.org. You'll find options to do it there. You can also find our list of upcoming programs. We've got a long list of scheduled programs, and it grows longer pretty much every day. We're adding more and more. So thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to introduce my co-host, and she is the host and the producer of the Michelle Meow Show, as well as a member of the Commonwealth Club Board of Governors. Her name, of course, is Michelle Meow. Michelle, good to see you again.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much, John, and thank you to the club for providing a platform to have these important conversations and inviting thought leaders from all over the world to join us. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our guest today. She's looking to make history by becoming the first Lao American judge in U.S. history. She's running for district court judge in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. She immigrated here from Laos with her family as refugees, having been sponsored by First Baptist Church. She now serves as the supervisor of the felony drug unit in the public defender's office for Mecklenburg County. Let's welcome Sunny Panyanuvong Rubek to the program. Sunny, welcome.
Thank you so much. And good morning, San Francisco. Good morning, John. And good morning, Michelle. That was a mouthful for my last name. It is very long.
Oh, I mean, you know, we always know you're either Lao or Thai by how many letters are in your last name. So, yeah, I'm glad that you added that, to your name and you hadn't lost part of it. But it's always so heartfelt and so powerful to hear, the story of our Lao American community and how we migrated to the United States. Let's hear yours. I know you've shared it a couple times in interviews. But what do you remember of your journey here to the States?
Yes, and thank you for that, Michelle. You're absolutely correct. And that's the reason why I hyphenated my last name. I felt that it was very important, not just because, having that name recognition for running for any sort of public office, but in general, in the practice of law, I wanted to make sure that our community knew that I was practicing law. I felt that my last name was important to keep for that reason. With that long last name comes a story that's probably quite familiar to you and to your family. My parents came here in the early 1980s. My mom and dad were both in their early 20s when they essentially decided that they were going to trade the only country that they knew for just the idea of freedom. They had 2 toddlers and 1 infant. My sister was only a year old when they made the barefoot journey from Baksan to Vientiane. My mom's village is in Baksan. What was interesting and scary, I just could not imagine, because they took half of the siblings with them and the other half remained in Laos to take care of our grandparents. We had a family of 16 kids and only 8 survived. Wow. And my aunt and my mom had a total of 4 toddlers and 1 infant on this journey. And they were afraid that the communist soldiers would hear our laughter or our crying. I just can't imagine the fact that a child's laughter or their crying would be a liability. So my mom gave me medication in order to keep us all quiet. Unfortunately, the medication she gave me was too much. And my aunt, lucky for me, noticed my limp body. And while we were on the wooden boat on the Mekong River, my aunt grabbed my limp body from my mom's arms and submerged me in the Mekong River in order to revive me. And that was my journey to the United States. I was only 2 years old, but the story that my parents tell me, it's very powerful, and I think about it every time. And I think about it when and how we got to America.
We're obviously going to be spending this hour talking about you and what you're doing here and what you're hoping to do here. But what was it like then getting settled in here, and what sort of life did your parents find when they came here?
We went to Olympia, Washington before we transferred to Modesto, California, where I grew up. Life was difficult, but also we were blessed to be able to be with a lot of other family members and a lot of other immigrants. So we were surrounded by the Lao community, which was helpful for my parents, but also it was a struggle because it forced them not to learn the English language as other families who've immigrated without having the community contact.
You know, Sunny, I asked my mom this too, and after over 38 years of being here and being a Lao American, you know, when I asked her the question of, when you got here, did you ever feel like I made a mistake, I want to go back? And she answered, nope, when I got here, I knew that it was home. I never had the feeling of wanting to go back. Sharing your story and the experience of coming here and, you know, being a refugee and now a Lao American or something American, that shapes you. You know, it shapes your perspective. It shapes how we create community, we create society, we are engaged and active, you know, here in this country. How did it shape you? In, you know, your background and then getting into law and politics?
Yes, and Michelle, I don't know how you feel, because I know that although our stories are similar, our experiences are very different. I was on a Zoom call a few nights ago, and when somebody described themselves as a 1.5 generational person, it really connected with me, because although I was born in Laos, I was raised in America in an environment that was very much still very Lao in tradition and culture. And so I still speak the language. I help out the community with the temple and everything. I feel very much American and Lao American all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I think it shapes me in understanding, you know, in terms of what education has provided, what opportunity has provided, but at the same time, making sure that I continue to practice, to respect, and to learn. Even today, I continue to learn about our heritage and our culture and make sure that I preserve that in addition to all of the American cultures that has embraced me and that I have welcomed into my life.
You do talk and on your campaign website as well about how the welcome your family received here really had an impact on you. Were there ever incidents where people were not welcoming, where people just looked at you and, you know, was negative because of your race or because you were an immigrant or anything like that?
You know, I think we all have that experience to some degree. You know, it's John. It's a difficult and interesting question. What I can tell you is it doesn't just happen in terms of other people, right? It also happens within your own community as well. Let me give you an example of what I meant. And I don't think that the intention was to be cruel. In fact, I think it was done out of love. My uncle told me as a young child who was still in high school when I told him I wanted to go to law school. He said, "Your hair is black, your eyes are brown, and you are a female. It is not your time to achieve such big dreams." And my dad also told me, out of love, you know, when I first became a paralegal and a legal secretary prior to that, he thought that was a very good accomplishment for me. And he did not want me originally to go to law school because he was afraid that society would hammer me down for trying to achieve too much too fast. And I had that in addition to not having somebody in the Lao community to talk to be a mentor. What is the LSAT like? What exactly does an attorney do? How do I get there? It's that, and of course, when you're a child, just because you look different. Other children may say things to you, but none of that. I think it's your perspective and how you are going to view what you perceive as criticisms that are lodged at you. I took all of those things, even what my uncle said and what my dad said, as something that I was going to show them. We can do this. And all the naysayers and people who were being negative to me, I took it as something else is going on in their lives.
Wow. You know what, Sunny? I mean, sharing your story, my mom would do anything to hear that I would become a lawyer. My dad, when they got here, he was aspiring to become a lawyer. And so when I told her I wanted to go into media instead, that whole conversation of, you can't, you have black hair, you're gay, you're, a woman, that just doesn't happen in talk radio. But here we are. And now you look to become the first Lao American judge. But that's a great segue to ask you. I mean, why did you want to get into law? Did something happen, or was there a particular reason? Why law and politics?
Yes, and I want to answer that question, Michelle, but I do want to say my dad is the opposite. He loves music, all the fun stuff and the culture stuff, and I know that what Tukta does in terms of singing, and I want to tell you that had I gone into media or entertainment, my dad would be ecstatic. So I had the opposite. He wished for children who went into that industry. Growing up in Modesto, a lot of, and I don't know if you will agree with me on this, but in Modesto, California, I tend to, in my generation coming up, and we were very much involved in the community, I tend to believe that a lot of the resources, although were given to male children in the family, more so than female children, it's the women or the girls in our community tend to go to college and the boys did not. And some of the boys tend to get into more trouble. And I noticed that a lot of my brother's friends were going into the court system, whether it was for, school fights or marijuana or things like that. And as they were going through the court system, I didn't understand that process, but I would see it on a personal level, and I would be interested in what would happen to them afterwards. And that's where my original interest in the law developed. It was the lack of knowledge and the curiosity about it and how it works.
Mm-hmm. And how did that, there are obviously a number of avenues one could take then, whether it's becoming a public defender or becoming an attorney or, practicing private law or, of course, eventually becoming a judge. What did you follow the path that you expected at that early beginning where you realized, okay, I've got an interest in this, or did it change? How did you kind of literally make the moves of becoming involved?
John, there was no path. There was just a desire, a dream. When I tell you I wanted to be a lawyer, I didn't know what lawyers did. I knew that they worked for law firms, and I knew how to print out my resumes. So I hand-delivered 100 resumes and walked door to door to every single law firm in Modesto, California, and asked them if I can answer their phones.
Wow.
That's how it started. And, originally when I thought, well, I'm going to go to law school, and then afterwards, I want to do immigration. I want to practice immigration law. I wanted to do that. But then the great thing is, once you go to law school, you have these opportunities of doing summer internship programs. And I interned with the Mecklenburg County Public Defender's Office. The minute that I got there, I knew exactly the reason why I went to school. It felt just like home. I knew that I wanted to practice criminal defense for a few years. And here I am, almost 11 years later.
Talk about the pursuit of happiness. If you haven't seen the film, you should, featuring Will Smith, just not in, stocks or whatever. We're talking about becoming a lawyer and now hopefully judge. Let's get into Mecklenburg County and the position itself. So North Carolina actually is the first state to adopt partisan court elections. And this is fairly recently, I think just a couple years ago. And this might have some impact on the candidate. Of course, you're running as the Republican candidate, but what about, the position itself and the role, of the court system? Curious just to hear your perspective on this, since not very many states, again, like I just mentioned, North Carolina is the first state to adopt the partisan court elections.
I'm not sure if we are the first, Michelle. When this happened, I was curious as well, because you're right, North Carolina was nonpartisan for over 20 years. And in 2018, party affiliation was added to judicial ballots. So I was curious how other states operate. And it appears that about 20 other states have party affiliation, including Alaska, Illinois, Tennessee, and Texas, and a few others. And I was very confused in 2018 when that happened and why it happened. And I can tell you, though, that once the party affiliation was placed, I can tell you now that I do know the breakdown of the district court, essentially. Right now, we have 21 district court judges, 20 as one seat needs to be appointed by the governor because the judge retired early. And out of the 20 judges that's currently sitting on the bench, we have 5 Republicans and 15 Democrats on the bench. And it's still fairly new here in Mecklenburg County. I certainly hope that party affiliation will not affect the judicial branch. I think that judges hear cases from all of Mecklenburg County. You hear the cases regardless if you're unaffiliated, Democrat or Republican. And I think that the law is the law and it should be applied equally to every single person.
Michelle and I were talking about this issue before the program, and I was saying my home state where I grew up was Wisconsin, where they have very politicized races for judges, especially in the state Supreme Court. It's allegedly nonpartisan, but of course everyone knows which candidate, the Republicans are supporting this candidate, the Democrats are behind this candidate. In that case, it wouldn't make any difference if they literally came out and said, I'm the Republican candidate for, this Supreme Court seat. But before we get kind of into further on this, tell us more, especially, all of us are from outside of your state. Tell us more about Mecklenburg County. What are, what are the demographics? What are the crimes that you saw up close? What what are the people involved in all this stuff that you decided you wanted to serve in a judgeship?
Mecklenburg County, the demographics, and the latest one that I was able to find, John, was 2013, 2014. And I was wondering that, I, of course, have lived here for over 14 years. And it breaks down to just Mecklenburg County alone has about 43% white, 31% African American, and about 20% other, including Hispanics and Asians, right? And that's the breakdown in terms of crime and what I have been able to see while at the Public Defender's Office. I started with the misdemeanor unit, so it's all misdemeanor crimes from simple possession of marijuana to assaults on a government official, assault on a female. And then I transferred to property crimes, habitual felon crimes, which California, I think you would be more familiar with that, as 3 strikes you're out, and to my current position in supervising the felony drug unit. So right now, the crimes that I see typically are either people who are using drugs, all kinds of controlled substances, from heroin to fentanyl, marijuana, cocaine, to allegations and of them trafficking in controlled substances.
I think that also is a perfect time for us then to bring up, the discussion about the need for diversity in these positions. You have a very unique, pathway, we should say, which earlier you said there really was no pathway to you becoming a lawyer, now potentially a judge, but you worked in the public defender's office. You know stories of people's real experiences and their life, right? And so not only that, but when we talk about diversity and we're talking about people's lives, it's important to also include, folks that are women or people of color. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, even if we started out the conversation and having this new party declaration, I mean, what else would you bring to the table as a woman whose family were refugees, as a person of color, and all that makes who you are?
Yes, Michelle. So Mecklenburg County, with the 20 seats that in district court that I was telling you about, we have, and then I just told you, John, the breakdown of the population and what Mecklenburg County looks like. We have 12 women on the bench, 8 men. We have 8 African Americans and 12 Caucasian Americans, 1 who came from Poland. And, Michelle, I think what I know what I bring to the bench, and I know it's corny to say, but I'm what I bring to the bench. And what I mean by that is not only am I an immigrant, right? I'm one that defines myself as a 1.5 generational. And yes, I am a public defender. And as I just indicated to you, the party affiliation has that as well in the breakdown of that. But I'm an individual who speaks a second language. Not many of our judges right now speak a second language. It makes me sensitive to the issue and the importance and the awareness that if someone comes before you who speaks another language, I just had someone who only speaks Polish, they must know the law and their options in their language if it's the only language that they understand. And even if you bring a Polish interpreter, that interpreter may not speak the same tone or dialect that they understand. I caught wind of this and brought someone out of New York so that my client could understand on a misdemeanor offense, because it's important because of collateral consequences of that. I am an individual who has a family who is dedicated to public service. My brother was in the U.S. Marines. He has service connection, so I understand mental health after being in the military. I have a sister who is public educator for over 16 years. I understand that CMS students here during the winter, that some students do not have coats during that time. I understand the school system may be their only safe source to get meals, to feel safe. I am an individual who has personal family members who I helped get off the streets because they lived as a homeless person for 3 to 4 years, and what that does to each and every single family member. I'm a person who financially, it was difficult. I'm the first in my family to graduate from college. I went to community college first before transferring to UCLA. When I went to law school, I went to historically Black college. That's where my education comes from. I'm a family, prior to that in second grade, I know what it's like to repeat the second grade because English is your second language. But despite all of this, despite the fact that my family had Section 8 housing, we collected food stamps, we had all of that, I'm also someone who has a Juris Doctorate hanging on the wall. So for all of those things, it's who I am. It's not just my public defender experience, it's my life experience. That's what I bring to the bench.
You're, of course, running for office in a year in which racial justice is front and center. I mean, nationwide, even globally, it's spread. And people in both parties have been out protesting and announcing the need for change. What can you, in a judge's role, do? What makes a judge's role a particular important place in this whole justice discussion?
John, it's been front and center for my whole entire career. It's only front and center as it relates to national politics. But I've watched the roles of judges in the last 10 years. I give this example because it's the one that's the most recent, that I saw a particular judge in Mecklenburg County recognize that at the beginning of the week, there was a defendant who came in to the courtroom and was offered a certain plea offer. That a few days later, there was a different defendant. And the only difference, and it was the judge who mentioned it, was who the defendants were. Their criminal record, she said, was very similar. She said their crimes were practically identical. And she wanted to know why the plea offer was so different. I think it takes judges who will speak up when they see this and ask the questions that are appropriate when they see injustice in this manner. Just small examples like that. But it starts, John, that is, in criminal justice, it's not just what happens in court, right? And I'm speaking specifically because we're talking about crimes and stuff like that. District court judges will hear multiple sorts of cases, from small claims to family law. But for our purpose, I'm gonna continue to stick to criminal law. As you know, in order to get to court, something happened well before then, right? It's when police officers decide, when they stop someone for a tag or expired registration, whatever the basis is. How did they use their discretion? Did they decide to issue a citation, or did they decide to arrest? And all of that has consequences, right? Because if you issue a citation, the person does not go through the jail system. They don't lose their jobs. They don't lose their cars. They don't lose, their children in some circumstances, because what if they were on their way to pick up their children? You never know. And then when you get to the court system, when the judge is setting bail, whether that person gets out, right? Because at the time where the judge is setting bail, the person is charged with a crime. They are not convicted of crime. And then when you get to the DAs, what did the DAs do in terms of the offers that they're making, in terms of the programs that they're making, and who gets the benefit of certain programs and who does not? And then when it comes to the public defender's office, you get to your attorney, and did your attorney do a sufficient job advocating for you? Do they have their own internal bias and prejudice? Are they treating each and every single one of their clients equally and properly? And then when you get to the phase of the judge doing sentencing, it's the same analysis, and it proceeds. It proceeds when the clients go into custody, right? Who's getting work release? Who is getting the programs, whether it's drug education in court, it's the GED program, who gets to be on top of that line? It's a whole holistic approach. It's never isolated to just one department.
Thank you so much for that, Sunny. And John and I talk about this all the time too. It's just so important, that we understand how things work if we want change, if we want to fix things that aren't working. But speaking of crime, while we're on this topic, there is an ongoing national conversation right now about criminal justice reform. And we don't have to get into it, but I would love to hear your thoughts on crime and reducing crime or recidivism, itself. And you had mentioned, restorative justice, or much more, healing strategies. And so if you could speak just a little bit about that, and I think you have a great perspective if you were to become judge.
Yes. And Michelle, I think, I'm all about the law. What does the law allow the judge to do? Is the judge following the law? Because I'm also a firm believer that judges, that's our role, first and foremost, is to follow the law and to apply it equally to the people who come before us. And there's a great statute that guides judges. And it tells you, I mean, the title of that statute is, what is the purpose of sentencing? Okay. And I read this constantly, and a lot of people don't know. And it guides you. It guides you completely. The primary purpose of sentencing a person convicted of a crime is basically to impose a punishment commensurate with the injury of the offense. Okay, so proportionate, has cause, and you must take into account. It doesn't tell you, right? That the law doesn't tell you what percentage, but the judge should take into account factors that may diminish or increase the offender's culpability. It is factors to protect the public by the person who offended. There are factors towards, and it says it, right? The purpose of sentencing is towards rehabilitation and restoration to the community as a lawful citizen. There's an obligation towards helping this individual to come back to society and to be productive, and then to provide general deterrent from basically criminal behavior in the future, right? So yes, it is about law and order, but what exactly does that mean? You know what I mean? An individual who is charged with a drug crime, you can, and there's a grid that every judge must follow. You can send everybody to prison. But what does that really do to society? Is it helping society? Are we looking towards rehabilitation? Because when the person gets out, they're still going to be amongst us. They're going to be your neighbor, Michelle. They're going to be your neighbor, John. What have we done to help this individual become productive once they return?
Have you, I mean, in the time you've been practicing, you must have seen examples where things were handled poorly, or where people really were treated unfairly in the system. Can you give us some examples of this, and also some sense of maybe, is this frequent, or are these rare cases that injustice kind of is perpetuated?
You know, John, it's not. It's a question that I can answer, but I don't think I'm the right person to answer. I think that question is best answered by individual defendants. I have clients who went to prison and thanked me because I fought for them, because I wasn't the lawyer who pushed them to make a decision they originally did not want to do. It really isn't necessarily about the outcome from my experience in practice as how you are treating people that makes the biggest difference. The one example that I can give you that I saw, you know, people always ask you, and it's the question, what is injustice? We know it because we feel it, right? And the biggest question is, what is justice? What is justice to me? An example that happened in court was a young person walked into the courtroom and he was wearing a green jumpsuit. That green jumpsuit tells you, John, that individual is a juvenile. He is charged with a crime, a misdemeanor crime called assault on a female. In order to be assault on a female, you must, by law, be 18 or over. You must be 18 or older. The person walked in the courtroom, sat with his lawyer. The DA called the case to trial, never looked at the person who they were trying to realize they can't do that. The judge noticed that, of course, the defense attorney knew it. She looked up in the middle of the trial, walked over and said, "How old is your client?" And our response was, "How old do you think he is?" And the case got dismissed. To me, justice is when you are seen. If you're not seen, nothing starts.
Sunny, do you feel that, you know, if you do make the transition from a public defender to a judge, part of me also thinks that we'd be losing an incredible individual as a public defender helping the community. But perhaps, the transition to a judge and making the decision would be even much more powerful. But even that statement alone, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, is that, is it what point or in your career where you're like, I really want to be a judge now? I just would love to hear from the beginning when you said, I'd really like to be a lawyer. I don't know what lawyers do, but I really want to be a lawyer. And now, obviously you've got a passion for the community and you really want to be a judge.
I do. And before going to law school, an attorney helped me get into North Carolina Central University, and he was running for Superior Court judge. In the process of campaigning myself out of a job, he helped, he helped me in developing my passion, my knowledge in terms of what judges will be doing and what the process is. And I thought, after practicing for a few years, I will eventually want to run to become judge. And that desire increased as other judges throughout the years stopped me and said, you should consider running for judge. You should consider doing so, not only because you are qualified to do it, but it's because it's important. It's just as having a balanced court, multiple people from all different party affiliation, having a diverse court that represents the community is important. We, in the years in which I practiced, Michelle, in the 10 years, and I've had colleagues who've practiced for over 30 years, I've only heard of Judge Diaz, who's no longer in Mecklenburg County. But John, I have never taken a case before a Hispanic American or an Asian American judge, ever. And, when you ask me, and thank you for that compliment that I would be, we'd be losing somebody at the public defender's office. I also feel that there's a calling and that there's a purpose, and, the goal is to get on the bench. But Michelle, the fact that I'm running, the people who have reached out to me, the students, not just Asian American, but Hispanic American, teenage kids said, thank you for doing this. It is so important to us. It's a win just by trying.
To get away from, I guess, all the legal questions and just to go more into the campaign, what's it like campaigning during a pandemic? Are you selling campaign facial masks? Are you able to get out and shake hands, or is it all electronic and Zoom meetings?
Like anything else, of course, we appreciate all of the donations, John, but we know COVID, we are selling absolutely nothing. But if you will wear a Sunny for a Judge mask, I will send you one. We have everything. And campaigning, I'm a first-time candidate, and I feel completely blessed and loved. I can tell you, John, that the positive feedback that I have received greatly outweighs any and all negative. And the negative has been probably less than 10%. It warms my heart and it humbles me to know that mine is a local, isolated, little tiny, very important judicial race. But we are a small race that most people don't even know or will vote for judges. But I have gotten donations from 26 different states from the U.S. A lot of the donations come from young adults, from communities who say, we are behind you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for paving the way. There was an individual who contacted me. He actually fought in the secret war. He couldn't have children. He called me and he said, I want you to know that all the reasons why I fought was to give you this opportunity, and I am so proud of you for taking it.
Wow.
And it's the support has been overwhelming, John.
Sunny, I think that ties into a new time, a new movement in American politics. I mean, over the last few years, we've seen a record number of women and people of color, just people running for the first time for anything, running. And so the engagement is there. And so do you feel that is indeed part of your, campaign as well? I mean, looking at pictures of what you do on social media, you're at every, community opportunity. Of course, with the pandemic and everything happening, I'm not saying you're, not distancing with distance, I notice, but making masks for nurses and things like that. And if you could speak a little bit about, what I'm talking about, this movement, do you feel you're a part of that?
Absolutely. And it's not just, when we talk about diversity, people always talk about racial aspects of it. Just so people in San Francisco can understand a little bit of Charlotte, North Carolina, Mecklenburg County, we have an African-American mayor, African-American police chief, the head of the sheriff's department, right, is African-American. The DA is African-American. Our courts are, 8 out of the 20 are African-American. So to me, right, of course, we don't have any Asian-American or Hispanic-American, but it's not our race that just brings the diversity. It's our life experience. I want to see more individuals who have a different perspective, whether they were refugees or came here, under a different status, different backgrounds in terms of your religion. All of these things make our community diverse and fulfilled. We bring all of it, not just by race, but us as an individual. That's why I said, I know it sounds corny, but I am what I bring to the court.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier about, of course, creating your own path into your career and not having mentors within the Lao community. I assume you're a mentor to others in the Lao community now. You like you said, that they can look at you and say, hey, I can get a Juris Doctorate on my wall as well.
Not only am I a mentor, this process and the people who I have met, John, and it's not limited to Asian Americans or Lao Americans, I feel a deep appreciation and a deep obligation to give back. It warms my heart when a 20-year-old college student donated $20 to my account and said it's not a whole lot of money, but it's a lot to me, and it meant so much to show you support. That $20 meant more to me than you can imagine. Because someone is willing to reach out, they don't know me. Yes, we probably share a last name that's half of the alphabet, although it's different. So much has been given to me during this process that I feel myself. Nobody's saying or putting the pressure on me. I feel myself that I have a responsibility to do more for our community. And that means our community at large.
Now we're coming full circle, from the beginning of the conversation, as we're winding down. How does your family feel about you now and your path to becoming a judge and having successfully, given back to our country, or I guess Mecklenburg County, by serving as a public defender?
Well, my siblings say, you're finally out of school. So that's really good. That's the first thing. And we're a family who gives back to the community naturally. As I said, my sister is currently helping other ESL teachers with their curriculum and their criteria. She was in the CMS school system for quite a while. My brother, he served in the Marines right now. He's focused on raising his family. Unfortunately, we just have my father's. My mom passed away my first year of college. But Dad, Michelle, is very proud of me. But I think that he, as someone who loves entertainment, who loves karaoke and the more fun side of life, I think the fact that he's getting attention through, the campaign is what he's most excited about. But he still doesn't understand, why couldn't you become a singer?
It's not too late. It's not too late. It could be,
I think I would scare away all of your fans right now.
You could moonlight as a singer, at nighttime when you're not focused on cases or making these important decisions.
Only if it's lip singing.
Are you enjoying the campaign, and is the experience of campaigning what you expected, or has it turned out differently?
It is the best. It's one of the best experiences of my life, and I would recommend that everybody run for office at least once.
Wow.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'd be so scared. Sunny, there is one question, a really important one, about the role of judge, as other elections will happen throughout the country. You touched on it earlier, and I'm not sure about Mecklenburg County, but if you are elected, what is the term that you would serve, and then your thoughts on term limits for the judge position?
For district court judge, the term would be 4 years, and then I would have to run for re-election in 4 years. If there were term limits, and that's the law for judicial, races, I would completely be fine with that. I think that, even as a public defender, what I said was this: I don't think you should go into any occupation and think, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I think the work that you do and the people who support you and want you there should dictate that. If you're not doing the job to serve the community and years have gone by and the passion isn't there, or the ability to do the work to its fullest is no longer there, then I think it's time to do something else.
Mm-hmm. And where are we in the stage? Obviously, the election's in November. It's a partisan campaign. So, has the primary already taken place?
I didn't have a primary, John.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it already has taken place.
Okay. So it's down to it. So it's you, and there's another candidate. I assume a Democrat.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Well, we're excited for you. Now back to the question of making an impact for the Lao community, but making history. I don't know. Is that pressure at all?
I welcome the pressure, Michelle. I welcome this challenge. Like I said, it's the fact that I am doing this, right? I think is so important. I hope more, we have a lot of students who went to law school who are practicing from Mexico, Ecuador, and all of these other countries. I hope that when if I end up practicing in Mecklenburg County for much longer as an attorney, I hope for the opportunity to bring a case before different judges for any and all circumstance. My clients' lives and their situations are so unique and so diverse. I want to be able to have the opportunity to put them in the best circumstance. And the only way that happens is if I have options in terms of the circumstance that I place them in front of.
When do you think there will be a president who will appoint you to the Supreme Court?
I don't know, John. I don't know.
Well, okay. Here's an easier question, or maybe a more difficult one, but a real one. Talking about potentially being the first Lao American U.S. judge in the country. When did you learn that there had never been one before, and what did that strike you as? That's a challenge, or that's a disappointment that hasn't been achieved yet? I mean,
both.
Yeah.
Both. But if you look at it, Michelle, when I looked at the statistics last, there's less than 5%, John, 5% Laotians who practice in all of the United States. In my years of practice, John, I've heard of 2 other Lao Americans in North Carolina who are practicing, and I've only met one of those individuals. So in North Carolina, out of all of us, it seems to only be less than 10, and I'm giving that as a high number, 10 attorneys who practice in North Carolina. I was so excited to learn that we have Judge Tai Vang, who is Hmong, who is on the bench in Stanly County. I mean, I was surprised when I learned it, and it made me very proud.
I think the question that in staying, being a representation of success for Lao Americans, especially second generation, third generation. I'll speak candidly and even my own experiences and what I've seen in the Lao community, Lao American community here in California, having grown up in the Central Valley as well, Sunny. But our parents, refugees coming here was very hard, like you had mentioned. Language barriers, access to education necessarily wasn't easy, and healthcare, and we take jobs. The very traditional stories of many folks who move to another country and start a brand new life, and so this is almost like what you would become is a success story, perhaps even maybe a blueprint of where we could keep building power, sustain that kind of power and resources to become successful ourselves. And so if you could have some thoughts or some words for young Lao Americans, what success means, and not necessarily the traditional words of go to school and get a degree. That's exactly what you did. But there's also that really, hardworking thing that you did where you knocked on doors. And I think that that is incredible and that is remarkable. But if you could give us some words of encouragement and advice for young Lao Americans.
Michelle, I want to first say that you are a success and I am a success despite what happens in November, right? The process, the door knocking, all the connections that I've made is a success. The people who have touched my heart, the words of encouragement that I would give anyone, no matter how old you are, because going to North Carolina Central University, the age group of the law students varied. We had someone there in their 50s. No matter if you're young or if you're old, I think the biggest lesson in life is to do it and not be afraid to fail. Something that's culturally, even with the Lao community, right? We don't do things because we're afraid. Sometimes the process of what we do, the fact that you didn't achieve what you originally thought was the goal or what we would define as failure, is the lesson. It is the path. And I think our fears, with our experience and everything else, tends to stop us from achieving. Go out there, do it. And if you fall, I think that's okay too.
That's so incredible. We got about 10 minutes left, Sunny, and this was not part of the questions that I and John sent to you to prep. And we do this. I think it's so great with any candidate because it takes you away from your speaking points. And part of, I think being a candidate is getting to know you, although you've been so upfront about who you are. We have a good sense of who you are. But let's have some fun for the last 10 minutes and ask you some questions that are a little more personal.
I thought you were going to ask her to sing.
My wife is here, so Sunny mentioned my wife Tukta earlier, and she's a singer. We could bring her up, and then we could do a whole pop duo here. John and I will be rap artists. We're very much into rap, but no. Let's start off with
that's the right idea. This is how we're going to get me on the bench on November 3rd. That's the right idea.
Let's start with food and Lao food. Favorite Lao dish?
Tam hong, papaya salad, by far.
Spicy, traditional papaya salad with the fish, exponential fish paste.
Yes,
yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
Awesome.
if you have a spice scale of 0 to 10, I needed at least a 20, please.
Wow. And same for your husband, Ben, Mr. Rubik?
When we go to Thai Taste, he will, they have a scale of 1 to 5. He'll order a 3, and we do fresh chili. So it's a little spicier, so it's really authentic spice.
That's pretty good.
Yes. So it's decent.
He passes, John.
Well, I guess staying along those lines, popular culture, what movies, what books, what inspires you, and what do you maybe just enjoy?
Because I saw this the other night, I also recommended it to many people. I think I also recommended it to Michelle. The last documentary that I saw is This Little Land of Mines was terrific. I highly recommend it. So for me, I'm all about documentaries. If you ask me about movie stars and things like that, I couldn't name one. Mm-hmm. But the documentary, and you suggest it, I will be watching it within a week.
One documentary that Michelle and I saw just recently when we interviewed the filmmaker and the focus of it, Maria Ressa is a Filipino-American journalist down in the Philippines who has drawn the ire of President Duterte there. And it's a great insight into her crusade for press freedom. It's called 1,000 Cuts. And where can she find it?
PBS Frontline. And so out April 7th. But if you go to the website, 1,000 Cuts Film, they're doing this really neat thing. Speaking of all of us having to move forward in a world of a pandemic, doing virtual screenings in which they paired up with theaters, all over the country. And you still got to watch the film virtually, but the money that you pay helps also raise money for the theater, your local theater. And I think, that's just so brilliant to do that while theaters are, super impacted.
And while we're on this topic, because I did my first showing in that way through Zoom, and I thought at first this is kind of a strange way to watch a movie. But the experience that I had doing it was so different and unique. I quite enjoyed the Zoom watching of a movie with over 130 strangers, at home. I thought it was a great experience. And if you have not done that, I highly recommend it.
And no one's sitting in front of you or blocking the screen or kicking your seat from behind. It's much nicer.
It is.
So Sunny, when you win, if elected, or when you find out and that happens, how will you celebrate?
I would first have to thank everyone who supported me, and second, I think I would have to sleep.
Yeah, and would
celebrate in that order. Yes.
Does that apply to your husband as well? How's it been for him? During this campaign, you're running for the first time. You've been married for over 10 years, so this is new for him as well.
It's very new, and for him, he is going to celebrate by being able to see our carpet, because right now we can't see an inch of our carpet from paraphernalia down there, from brochures and yard signs and everything. He cannot wait to have his home back.
Okay, staying on getting to know you a little bit better, personally. So Lao food, and then if not Lao food, what else?
Vietnamese.
Yeah, I know. I rate my. No, that's so great. And what do you do to relax and unplug?
I run. And before this, Michelle, with the gyms closing, I did something very unique. We had a judge who retired. She was known as the yoga judge. And for about a year, I was doing aerial silks. And that's what's unique, and that's what I do for fun.
You mean, wait, aerial silks?
Yes.
We went from running to aerial silks. Not necessarily like gymnastics on aerial silks, right? Or never mind.
It's like being part of a circus act. It's a lot of fun, and there's studios nearby. It's great for upper body strength and exercise.
Wow.
And group that attends, it's very diverse, dynamic, and very energetic in terms of individuals. I love it because the age ranges. I'm completely inspired by the student who is close to her 60s, and the moves that she does on the silks, I can't even copy because she's far advanced than I am.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
I'd never heard of that before. I'm going to have to go look that up now.
I've only seen it.
Not only do you have to look it up, but you'll have to text me when you try your first class.
Sunny, I know you like to travel, and we can't travel right now. I mean, one, you're super busy trying to win an election here or win as judge, but and the pandemic. But as soon as we can, where are you going?
We are going to go to New York because I promised my niece and nephew that I would take them there. It will be our first trip together, and we had to cancel it because of COVID. But it's on our list, and it's the very first destination spot.
I have to, something you just said reminded me of this. So I've got a colleague who recently got not a summons, but a notice of jury duty, and she was surprised that they're still holding in-person court cases, and apparently they are. Are they doing this? Is in California, of course. Are you still going into court and holding cases? Are they doing things via Zoom? How is the court system there dealing with this pandemic?
I understand that family court has tried some of the electronic means. Criminal court, we are still going into court, but we are not issuing jury summons. Jury trials are not starting up, in my understanding. And if it does, like right now, I think we're thinking September. Wow. But I am going into court during admin. This is my admin week. I've been in court every day practically this week, and it's for administrative purposes only.
Wow. Thank you.
Last question for you, Sunny, and that is really just leaving us with some final thoughts. I know you've already given us some words of hope and also encouragement for our own creating our own paths. But perhaps, and this has to do with if elected and then kind of looking at even the short-term future. I walked into the club today and I wanted to know what John's plans were for 2021. But I think we're all just trying to look forward, look to the future, look to the near future. So leave us with some final thoughts.
COVID has taught me really to appreciate the small things, from being able to hug, shake a person's hands and all of that. The final thought that I would give is just a deep appreciation with all the negativity that we feel and everything that's going on and questions of, do we fit? I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for opportunities such as this. The fact, Michelle, that you would invite me to your platform, knowing my background, knowing the party affiliation, everything like that, and you would still invite me to the table. I am sincerely thankful. John, it is a Thursday morning over there. You don't know who I am. This is the first time that I've met you. I sincerely thank you for your time. I thank all the people and all the strangers who have sent me words of encouragement, telling me they are proud, who have sent those donations. It means so much. And I just want to thank my community. I want to thank people who are on the opposite sides of me, because no matter what, at the end of the day, we still live in the same community. We still want the best for our families. And saying thank you, I think, goes a very long way. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
That is so great. But and just to remind everybody, that's what the club is all about, these nonpartisan conversations and bringing thought leaders from all over different backgrounds, and so we can learn from each other and hopefully make change, make it a better time and a better place. Sunny Panyanuvong Rubik for judge in Mecklenburg County. Sunny, thank you so much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you so much. I've got a long last name, but all you have to remember is I promise it will be Sunny in 2020.
Sunny in 2020, or you could, if you want to find out more about Sunny and her campaign, look up Sunny for Judge. I want to thank you for joining us here this morning. I know the club has several other programs throughout the day. And John, I will leave you with the last words.
I would say don't forget to join us tomorrow. Michelle and I will be here talking about the battle for Portland. And then later that afternoon, we'll have a political roundtable that I'll be hosting. So you can find out all about that, as well as find our past programs in audio and video and more at commonwealthclub.org. Have a wonderful and safe day. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mark.